Michael Viewmaster Morlan here, and welcome to Galactic Inquiry. Coming up, Guard Frequency joins us for another round of Go, No-Go. Nikki D'Angelo reports on the Murray Cup and the end of the universe as we know it. Van lingo, cockpits, and more coming up right after this. Hey, welcome to Galactic Inquiry, the weekly webcast where we feature you, the community of star citizens. And a big welcome to our newest Patreons, Michael Santoro, Joshua Stalkup, and Econobob. Your generous support allows us to keep bringing Galactic Inquiry to you each week. Now, while Galactic Inquiry is always free to watch and enjoys over 2,500 YouTube views each episode, it does take almost our entire week to produce this level of quality programming. So if you've been sitting on the fence about supporting the show, please take a moment, click that logo right there, and pledge $1 or $2 per episode, and we can keep bringing you news and comedy and interviews each and every week. Operation Bagel Carrier is underway, and what is that, you ask? Well, apparently, some people in the RSI chat roll were talking about the infamous fictional Bagel Carrier, and had the idea of sending CIG a fun themed lunch from local bagel shops all around the three main offices on the same day. And apparently, in the hopes that said donations might serve as raw materials for the newest prototype ship. All joking aside, Grimbrand and the Grimm's Reapers organization started a GoFundMe campaign to send a bagel lunch to the CIG offices. And any proceeds in addition to the actual cost of the bagel lunch will go to relief for the citizens of Haiti. You know, the Haitians are still reeling from the 2010 earthquakes that leveled much of the country, and with disease and famine following the tremors, many are still living lives without hope or relief. So, support Operation Bagel Carrier and make your contribution count for the citizens of Haiti as well. Later in the show, the Guard Frequency team joins us for another round of Go, No-Go, but now, here's the word of the week.
Word of the week. The word of the week is M-Drive.
The so-called reactionless drive that would propel a spacecraft with no outside force or propellant has been the stuff of dreams for many years. It has included mechanical attempts such as the Dean drive and the gyroscopic inertial thruster. The M drive is a microwave thruster that could power spacecrafts without the need for propellant, and unlike other theoretical attempts at reactionless drives, has the distinction of having been experimentally confirmed in 3 separate instances. First, by its inventor, British aerospace engineer Roger J. Scheuer, he's the smart one on the right, by Chinese researchers from the Northwestern Polytechnical University in Xi'an in 2010, and now, in 2014, by NASA's EagleWork Lab. Now, normally you'd think such confirmations would have settled the matter. The trouble is the M-drive thruster can't be explained without violating Newton's third law of motion. Nonetheless, NASA's experiments produced a confirmed net mean thrust over 5 runs measured at 91.2 micronewtons at 17 watts of input power. Now that's small, and NASA disputes critics who claim air currents might have formed providing thrust, asserting that the results were immediate and did not allow enough time for air currents to develop or dissipate. Critics are still yelling foul, however. Theoretically, these results just simply can't be explained. So, what to do? What to do? Well, we either have to reject a major law of Newtonian theoretical physics or throw out NASA's experimental confirmation of positive thrust. You know, I say we ditch the physics and keep the M-drive. And now, here's the news. Theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking recently claimed if enough energy is directed at the Higgs boson, often called the God particle, it could cause space and time to completely collapse. As Hawking wrote, the Higgs potential has a worrisome feature that it might become metastable at energies above, you can get this, 100 billion giga-electron volts. Now this could mean that the universe could undergo catastrophic vacuum decay, with the bubble of the true vacuum expanding at the speed of light. This could happen at any time, and we wouldn't see it coming. Fortunately, the likelihood of a Higgs boson catastrophe is pretty low. According to Hawking, such an event would require a particle accelerator larger than the Earth. But, as he quips, it's unlikely to be funded in the present economic climate. So I guess we're safe as long as the worldwide recession persists. And a bit closer to our present reality, in the new era of commonplace commercial space exploration, SpaceX executed another perfect launch of its Falcon 9 rocket, this time delivering an AsiaSat satellite to its geosynchronous parking orbit 3,500 kilometers above the Earth. The Falcon 9 rocket has now successfully completed 9 launches, with 3 sending its Dragon capsule to the International Space Station to deliver and return cargo. SpaceX also boasts the distinction of being the first commercial company to visit the ISS. Returning to Star Citizen news, Nikki D'Angelo reports on a certain highly anticipated racing event, sure to become an e-sport, both inside and outside the verse. Nikki?
Thanks, Michael. And as always, I'm very grateful that you allow me to present my stories here each week on Galactic Inquiry. My story has to do with Murray Cup racing. It seems that they're opening up time trials for next year's Murray Cup racing tournament about 3 months earlier than normal. And this is to allow for those teams switching over to the M50 to get an opportunity to get used to this new pocket rocket. I've also learned that Consolidated Outland is hard at work preparing the imminent release of a racing variant of the upcoming Mustang. Now, the Mustang already uses some high-tech alloys to lighten the ship, and the prototype that we've seen and the alien look of it makes it one of the nicest looking and fastest light ships on the market today. This may be the most diverse set of ships in the Murray Cup racing tournament in over 2 centuries.
Nikki, that's a welcome change from seeing just one type of racer in the event. Do you think other companies will be fielding racers as well?
Well, Michael, this often passed over page in the F7C's brochure. It shows a new engine for the F7C that allows it to partake in racing. Now, I did contact Anvil Aerospace about this, and they said, yes, indeed, it's available as an upgrade. However, the F7CS is more of a racer than the standard F7C, with its sleeker and lighter fuselage.
So how does one qualify for the Murray Cup tournament?
Well, Michael, on Monday I got a chance to sit down with Murray Cup Racing Tournaments coordinator Sandy Gardner, and she said, get your teams together and start practicing now, and details about how to enter the tournament will be available early next year.
Thanks, Nikki. Be sure to catch the full-length interview with the Murray Cup's new spokesperson on Nikki's Patreon channel. And that's your aerospace news. You know, at Galactic Inquiry, we're always looking for your creations, and here's what we found on the web this week. Now, we're a bit late reporting on this one, but it looks like some Star citizens are getting their land gaming on. Citizen Star News recently organized the Pitchfork Challenge together with Operation Pitchfork, Cloud Imperium Games, and the Bay Area Ready team. It looks like they're going to have a good time with that, and I look forward to seeing more of the same from those guys. Now, while you're visiting their challenge page, also check out Star Citizen News. While the website may only be in a pre-launch state, it is already 22 pages deep with blog entries. Also, check out the various gaming guides, organization profiles, and radio podcasts from partner The Base. Okay, this is pretty cool. CMO Patrick has taken the time to assemble some of the slang and the patois from around the verse into an unofficial Star Citizen fan fiction glossary. Words that stand out for me include antifreeze, one of the drugs used to save pilots ejecting into space from dying due to extended exposure. Banglish, a derisive slang for a Banu's halting English. And drifter, a person who has a tendency for sidetracking, pointless chatter, or poor skills. So next time a decker comes crashing through your hangar door, throws a klissnass at you, and calls you a pooch-ass drifter, you'll know what they're angry about. Now, as you may know, I love virtual elements that manifest in the real world, and it looks like Firefox is well on its way to building his own home cockpit dubbed the Dark Angel Firefox, complete with an eject input panel with arming trigger for the eject seat, a mechanical eject pull trigger, a SATEC command unit, and TMT.1600M flight stick. Add a track IR and a monitor, and Firefox will be ready to fly. Thanks to Star Citizen News, CMO Patrick, and Firefox. You're on this week's Fan Frequency. Good afternoon, or depending on your worldview, good evening, good morning. Today we return to Lost and Found by Charles Duncan. The history of Oscar Gruber's ship was still a mystery to him. The ship's maker, Drake Interplanetary, had been polite, but absolutely refused to release any information about the original sale. Returning to his ship, Gruber almost had the cargo ramp closed when he realized he wasn't alone. 2 hulking, brutish men stood flanking a third man seated at Gruber's workstation. He was much smaller, almost dapper, wearing a well-made business attire. Ah, Mr. Gruber, I was wondering when you would arrive. Please, sit down. Who are you people? Why are you in my ship? One of the boots visibly stiffened, a large pistol in his paw. Gruber was suddenly reminded of his visit to the prison over Lerona. He sat down. Mr. Gruber, my name is Mr. Reinhardt. We are employed by Drake Interplanetary. There are certain matters we feel it necessary to discuss with you. I trust you have sufficient time to talk. Gruber looked pale, but nodded back. Excellent. Now, Mr. Gruber, I also represent an interested party who has become aware you are making inquiries about a ship. A specific ship. This has caused some level of consternation, as my employer is a respected member of the community and has no wish to be involved in any scandals. Since you have been so diligent in asking questions, I am certain you won't mind answering a few of my own, such as, why are you so interested in the owner of a ship called the Pride of Kingsport? I found some abnormalities about it. I think that might have been the original name of the ship. It's certainly nothing that would justify you barging into my ship and threatening me. Oh, Mr. Gruber, no one has threatened you. Not yet. Now, if you could be so kind as to tell me about the locket. What locket? I don't know anything about a locket. Mr. Gruber, lying is not a forte of yours. Just as you have made inquiries, I have made my own. Miss Vincia said you were doing an admirable job trying to find its owner. Gruber sighed as the fight went out of him. He knew he was outmatched. It's in second drawer on the right side. Reinhardt reached down and pulled out a box, withdrew the locket from within, and held it in front of the Moby glass on his wrist. Yes, this is it. I believe it's genuine, yes. Gruber realized Reinhardt was having a conversation with someone through the Moby. Yes, I can take care of that. Are you certain that's what you want? Very good, then. He reached across to Gruber and handed him the box and locket. Mr. Gruber, if you would be so willing to spare us a few hours of your time, the owner of that locket would very much like to speak with you. All Gruber could manage was a slack-jawed nod. The story continues in issue number 21 of Jump Point. I'm Alastair Sinclair for Smithy. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, and good night. In what may become a regular segment on Galactic Inquiry, the gents of Guard Frequency join us from around the globe for another round of Go, No Go. Hey, welcome to our second segment of Go, No Go with the guys from Guard Frequency. Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
So, a lot has happened in the last 3 or 4 weeks since we last kind of did this together. And most importantly, Gamescom had a lot of interesting announcements at it. And version 0.9 is getting ready to come out with a bunch of cool stuff, including racing. So let's first talk a little bit about what some of the announcements in the August update newsletter from the CIG site was. Some cool things they showed in the demo included this multi-crew Connie ship demo that was actually real time, and there were some cool sub features that Eric Peterson kind of alluded to in his letter, including things like isolated physics grids so that you could have physics inside a ship as it was also being moved by larger forces. Tell me about some of the things you thought was exciting about that Connie demo that you saw. Tony, why don't you start that off?
I like the physics grid, the localized physics, you know, where the missile impacted and the guy was basically thrown against the bulkhead. You know, you saw him walking normally on the deck, and then all of a sudden he wasn't walking normally anymore because of new forces being introduced into the interior of the ship. So I think it was very encouraging to me to see they seem to have that figured out. So and that was the big stumbling block they talked about.
Eric, in the August newsletter kind of notes that they're going to be throwing us around like pinball wizards. So look forward to seeing how that works in a real kind of action flight situation. Lennon, what do you think? You think that's going to work for you? Not having absolute control over your you're running around inside your multi-crew ship?
Yeah, because I think it will just add to that level of realism. And you say you won't have complete control, but obviously that mimics real life, but it will make it so much easier because in games where you do have complete control, you often find that there's just a bit of an asynchronicity between what your character is doing and where they're running on the floor. When you've got the localized grids to help contain everything, the ship will be reacting, but your character will be going along with it, and you'll have to sort of fight to stay in control. It would be a bit like playing a racing sim and not having to turn into corners. You've got to be able to fight against the physics to get that sense of realism. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the multiplayer thing. Plus, it's everything that I wish a certain Star Trek Online could have been. But hey, what are you going to do?
Hey Jeff, so they threw this character around inside the ship when the ship was actually visible. They had to kind of reset that demo. But also they implied that the atmosphere was lost because there was a breach in the hull. Any thoughts about how that'll affect gameplay?
Well, I think Lennon said it best: is the level of realism. I think it'll affect gameplays that we have to rethink how we play our online games. I think this game is going to be a groundbreaker in the fact that we haven't experienced this in any other game. Even a large-scale game like Eve doesn't have this kind of atmosphere or realism intoned in the game. I think our perception and our universe is going to change.
I think that's absolutely correct. So, guys, give me a go or a no-go for the new sort of multiplayer in-ship physics kind of engine going on. Leave me a no-go? No-go? That's a go. That's a go.
It's too fun.
I think so, too. I think one of the big challenges will be scaling the physics inside a ship to, suppress inertia in order to keep you from being thrown, 50 feet to a hull.
Don't get me started on artificial gravity and all that stuff.
No, don't get me started.
There's artificial gravity.
Roger, 0G, and I feel fine.
So yeah, they haven't even addressed how they're putting that in the world. All right, moving on. The persistent universe is getting prototyped, we hear. According to the Austin office. And there's a lot of new stuff going on there, including transitions. There's been always a lot of debate about transitions from space to the surface to your hangar. And have we seen any evidence that there will be an actual physical visual travel from space to the surface, or are we expecting some sort of transition thing still? Jeff, what do you think?
I expect to see some type of transition, whether we land on a landing pad with our ship, or we take a surface taxi from our, it actually, we call it, it arrives, we board it, and we transition down. I would expect that from this game.
Lennon, there's been a lot of demos from other games and other subsystems that have been shown on Star Citizen programs as well, showing entering an atmosphere and kind of exploring a generated world. I wonder whether we can expect to see something like that.
Yeah, I think that's probably something that's realistic eventually, but not necessarily something that's going to be included in the first revision. I think, this kind of comes back to what I was saying last time about how they need to sort of, I think we were talking about stretch goals, and I said, they need to define what it is that they're actually going to deliver. And I think that to expect a full, you fly into an atmosphere, you can land your ship on a generated planet, I think that is genuinely a little bit too much to aim for launch. I would rather that the rest of the game was up and running, and you had the multiplayer physics and all of that sort of stuff worked out. If I have to watch a loading screen video for 10 seconds just to get on a planet, I'm cool with that. And they've done a very smooth transition with Arena Commander. When you load up your HUD and you hit, Broken Moon and go, it does a bit of a flicker, and then you go to the loading screen, and you can tell because it's not quite as animated, but it is very seamless in its transition from one to the other. So yeah, I'd be perfectly happy with a transition like that.
Probably more than a few seconds, given the number of assets they have to
Probably more than a few, yeah.
So moving on. So the HUD, Tony, the HUD is been subdivided apparently into multiple layers so that they can be distributed between various screens, and you can customize your helmet. What implication do you think that's going to have? What do you think about that?
Well, we like to talk about the ability to do second screens, to be able to use something like my Nexus guy here, or Lennon's phone, to, number one, play outside the game, and number two, enhance your gameplay inside the game. And I think the approach of the HUD being an actual physical in-game element, being something that is a separate entity, it's not just plastered up on your screen as a UI icon. I think that's going to help in the long run because it's going to say, hey, if you have a cargo screen, that's something that would easily be something you'd put on a tablet. If you have like your shield layout, well, maybe that's something that you're going to render in 3D and wouldn't be necessarily on your tablet, but you wouldn't expect it to be because that's not something you carry around with you. But it might be good for a second monitor. Sure. So I think the entire concept of treating each of the HUD elements, each of the physical environments, the localized gravity fields or whatever, treating each of the environments you transition from as real physical things, I think is just going to be good in the long run because they can just granularize it. I'm going to say that. Granularize it as much as they like and distribute it among different devices or even different components in the game. Your cargo loadout should be available on your Mobi-Glass, inside your ship, inside your hangar. Hell, while you're racing, do I have enough fuel for this? If I need to do a pit stop here, will they be able to change my tires or thrusters or whatever? So it's going to be good for the long run.
Awesome. So speaking of hangars, wow, they showed a whole new rendition of all the hangars. Is that justified? Why bother doing that?
I'm glad that they have at least made the separation that the ship you buy isn't what hangar you get, because as I've said many times on our show, I'm a fan of the real grungy looking hangar. So, but buying a freelancer gave me a business class, right. So I couldn't get the hangar I wanted with the ship I wanted, which it's just all about choice. So I'm glad that they took it and they separated it out on that. As for the redesigns, yeah, I mean, if you look at everything else that we've got, if you look at the concepts of the early HUDs versus the HUDs that were released at Arena Commander versus the HUDs that we're getting now. The Retaliator was a recent screenshot collection that came out, and you can see how it's evolved. I just think that Hangars is just one of those assets that, again, it evolves. They've gone back, they've applied everything they've learned to it, and they've just produced something that is just even more mind-blowing than what we were expecting. So no, I'm up for this.
So the hangars are certainly beautiful in their new rendition, and they've been redesigned, I understand, primarily to support the room system that wasn't actually kind of realized with the first hangars. Jeff, have you had a chance to see any of this kind of room system or any sort of evidence beyond just some mentions of it in Tin for the Chairman?
I haven't seen, I've seen some of the concept stuff, and I got to say that I kind of like the system. If you look at it from the perspective that you're going to spend a lot of time in this game, and your presence, your desires are going to be expressed not by just by the ship that you fly, but by where you live. Mm-hmm. And I think that the room system accommodates a lot of our desires to customize or build or fit the needs. This needed a room system. You couldn't just buy. I have the deluxe hangar. And I tell you, it's huge. And I wish that I could I could shrink it or change the layout, but sure. I can't. This will allow us to do that, and I think everybody was clamoring for that. I don't think there's anybody really that's upset over the new hangar system.
So yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. I hadn't thought about the hangar actually being reconfigured, but that's great. Instead of this infinite path down to the fog layer, you can actually break it into smaller hangars with room systems in between that and sort of thing. That's a great idea. So the August update, a lot of interesting things in there. Let's give us a go, no-go for what they're showing up in the August update.
Go.
Yep.
But don't go any farther. That's enough.
Yes. Yeah.
I was gonna say go, but go now. Now.
Yeah.
Now.
I'm sure in our show that we'll be able to pick it apart a bit, but overall a go. Definitely a go.
Yeah, definitely I agree on the go on all the new updates that they've been showing both at Gamescom and in the recent August update newsletter. So moving on to a more difficult subject, Blue Destiny had an interesting rant on the forums recently about an essential part of the game that has been sort of not really discussed much, and that is core gameplay. How is the game going to be fun? I mean, it's enough, we've got ships and we've got going to have planets and worlds, but what is going to make it interesting for us? And there doesn't seem to be much of a substantive discussion about that with the community. Anytime the community throws those big questions, they sort of get kind of softballed or batted aside, and there's not really a deep discussion about how this is going to play. One of the main points that Blue Destiny makes in his post is, if you don't discuss this now, you're going to end up with similar fates like games like SWTOR. And how do we avoid that? Tony, how do you feel, has there been any substantive discussion about core game mechanics that you can recall, and what do you feel is lacking and needed?
Not that I'm aware of, and I think it's still too soon. I mean, this is if this were September 2015 and we're having this discussion, I would say yes, but there is still way too much to be done. The discussion about even transitions between space and planet. I mean, these are going to be separate games that are going to have to be mushed together. So you have a 2-layer challenge. You got to make each individual piece of the universe work, and then they have to work together. I mean, and that goes to the 3 or 4 different screens you're going to have, and how am I going to keep track of all the different data that's going to go between them? It's just there's too much to do, and it's still in an early stage to start talking about the nuts and bolts of how you're going to accomplish a cargo transfer. When that cargo transfer has to be physically modeled in your ship, it has to show up as a piece of data in your mobiGlas thing. It has to show up in your hangar as you're loading and unloading it. There's too much to do at this point before to get into nuts and bolts.
Jeff, do you agree or disagree with that point?
I agree. I would give Blue Destiny credence to his rant if we were in Chris's definition of a beta version of the game. There's just this is not even fleshed out yet. I mean, we're getting 09 and some new updates, but all the intricacies are just not complete. And until we see a lot of that interaction between content on the ground and content in space, and the interaction between players, we're not. This doesn't hold any water.
Okay, so it's okay to put. I think of it as the cart before the horse. Yeah, you're setting in this infrastructure, but Lennon, is there a danger of impressing the infrastructure and it getting in the way of changes or expansion of scope when it comes time for actual game mechanics?
In this instance, I don't think so. I think Blue Destiny has, like Jeff was saying, there's a lot of really good points that were made, but I think overall it's just slightly missed the mark, primarily with the comparison to other MMOs. Now, I know that this has been said time and time again, this is not an MMO, it's a persistent universe. But let's face it, it's a multiplayer online game. It's an MMO. I think the difference here is that the question seems to surround game mechanics. How X is going to do Y? How are we going to get cargo into the ship? It's not a game. It's a simulator. This would be like comparing Microsoft Flight Simulator to Lord of the Rings Online. They are 2 entirely different games. Yes, we're working with a little bit of sci-fi fantasy, so there's going to be some things that are going to have to be made up. Planet-side transition landings, like we said, we might have to cutscene them for the time being, but how are you going to load cargo? Simple. You're going to put a crane out, you're going to pick your cargo up, you're going to bring it back, and you're going to drop it. Do we need a discussion about that? It's a simulator. It's not I'm going to have to click F1, open up my tab to do this, and then I'll cast this spell, which will tractor it. No. We might have a tractor beam that's possibly as close to magic as we're going to get, but it's just science we don't understand yet. So I think the approach is slightly off. I think that we all kind of know the answers that we're going to get. How are we going to go forward? You're going to push the throttle. How are we going to turn? You're going to turn your stick, because it's not a game, it's a simulator. How you would do it in real life is how you will do it in the game eventually.
The one concern that Blue Destiny does have that I think that maybe is the underlying issue is that can we get our hands on it early enough to change it before it's baked? And that is a concern. The problem is that because of the multiple dependencies, there may be only one way to make this X system work in planet-side and in space and with your mobiGlas and on the back-end server side. Because it all has to work together, there may be only a very narrow set of options to hook it together. And so even if we could, they were open to suggestions for how things should be changed or improved, there just may not be a way to make it all work together and be able to change it.
Sure.
And I don't even know if we're at that stage yet. I don't know.
No, we're not. No, you're right.
To suggest something, to get them to worry about them, I don't think we're ready for this kind of rant yet.
All right, so the consensus seems to be, yes, this is something to be concerned about at some point, but not today. So give me a go or no-go for the way that Chris and company are handling their development cycle. Tony.
Oh, the CIG, they're still go. I'm still go with them.
And Lennon?
Yeah, definitely still a go.
And Jeff?
Absolutely. Go.
Well, we're sounding like a bunch of fanboys this week since we've
I don't
given
know.
a thumbs up on everything. But
probably to start a podcast or something. You know, we seem to be cheerleaders. And
well, I'm
stuff.
sure you can tackle these subjects in even greater depth on your own show on Guard Frequency. So I look forward to hearing that show coming up next time. And listen, guys, I want to take a moment to say thanks a lot for coming on. Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Lennon. It's great to have you guys on for another episode of Go, No Go.
Always a pleasure, Mike. Thanks.
All right. So next week, famed game developer and former astronaut Richard Garriott joins us to talk about his life making games and floating in freefall. And it's week 2 of Wingman Watch and no Eric to be found. Mid Lesnick recently replied to my requests, noting Eric's appearance is being negotiated, whatever that means. So hey, come on, CIG, what's up? Why are you keeping the Wingman under wraps? Inquiring minds want to know. You know, we work hard to bring the best galactic inquiry possible to you each week, so become a Patreon backer today and enjoy the benefits of supporting a show by and for the fans. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll get a ping each time we publish a new video. And keep in touch through your favorite social portal. Links to galactic inquiry sites may be found on our website and in the YouTube description block right down there. So, this show belongs to the Star Citizen community, so be sure to give us your feedback on the thread below. And of course, the centerpiece of our show is fan creation. If you have something cool to share, please send it to us. And if it doesn't suck, we will be sure to show it. And remember, we're listening.